right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here. And the legend.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another mini episode of Tablesetters, covering all the fallout of the 2026 WBC. As always, I'm Steve. You guys can support our show. Follow us at Tablesetters Pod on IG and on X, getting into all the action with baseball, giving you guys all the coverage of this WBC 2026, but also college baseball, of course, Major League Baseball and fantasy baseball. Devin and I were in the lab last night creating the AL and NL West division previews kicking off. We're getting a whole bunch of content coming your way to preview the season that's only a few short weeks away. Looking forward to it. And the World Baseball Classic is certainly helping us keep us occupied until we have Major League Baseball taking hold here in the United States. And it is the first week of the 2026 World Baseball Classic that is in the books. And I got to say, if it taught us anything, it's that international baseball refuses to behave in the way we expect it to. A lot of winding roads to get to where we are. We spent some time in Houston, spent some time in Miami, San Juan, and Tokyo. We began with 20 teams, and we whittled it down to the Elite Eight here. And, I mean, listen, you can talk about all the WBC and all the skeptics out there about what this means or what it doesn't mean. But, you can't ask for more for what you were expecting from a global baseball scale. You got the unexpected drama with the standings. You got some historic individual performances. And we have to discuss, even though they sidestepped it, where you had a powerhouse United States team creating a problem for itself because, let's be honest, they didn't fully understand the math of its own group. And as we wrap up here on March 11th, that's where we're recording today, March 11th. You guys listen to the audio the next morning, and I appreciate the support. The quarterfinal bracket is finally set. If you're watching on YouTube at Tablesetters Baseball, you guys can see the bracket up on here. But getting there was anything but straightforward. And in the end, the standings are sorting themselves out. The tournament moves to the stage where none of the math matters anymore. You can breathe easy. And now we're sitting here where the quarterfinals begin in Houston, where the U.S. will face Canada and Italy will face Puerto Rico. On the other side of the bracket, Japan, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, and South Korea are going to be still chasing the championship. And we're on a collision course of all these powerhouse teams that have a lot of vibes going for them, a lot of electricity. And really, the atmosphere has been amazing. I've seen a lot of discussion on Twitter. And I mentioned we had Sean Spradling on here to preview the WBC. And he's the foremost expert on World Baseball Classic and a lot of the international baseball footprint. He had a good discussion about the atmosphere here and talking about really the distinctness of all these different foresights we've had here and watching all the electricity. It feels like a World Cup environment. And that's truly what it is. And that speaks volumes about where the World Baseball Classic is in the course of 20 years to see where it's grown at this point and how much it actually means. 8 teams left, as I mentioned. Every game is a win or go home game. And that's all you can ask for. If you imagine the drama that we saw in this first stage here, in that first week, it's just going to be ramped up to the next level. But let's get into the meat of the order. And we're going to talk about Italy's historic night, the close call with USA, and of course, setting the stage for the World Baseball Classic quarterfinals. Let's get into it.
We have the meat.
All right, so we said goodbye to the final games of pool play, and the picture of the knockout stage of the 2026 WBC is becoming quite clear. So we set the stage already. We talked about the host cities. The field had been reduced now from 20 teams to 8, and with the pool stage completed, you guys are seeing this on the screen here. You can kind of see where the bracket is taking us. We're moving into a phase that makes this tournament for a lot of fans of baseball, very unforgiving. We're not used to being in a single elimination format. A lot of fans of sports, obviously, if you like the NFL, if you like March Madness, it's win or go home. It makes it very compelling. It makes for great must-see TV. You're creating urgency in a vacuum here. And the quarterfinal round marks the start of this portion of the tournament that everybody looks forward to. And there's no series. There's no opportunities to recover from poor performance, and a single game can determine whether a team continues playing for a championship or whether it ends dramatically. And that's the fun part about this. And for people, and again, we are long-term baseball fans. We talk about the marathon, the attrition of a 162 game season, getting to the World Series. It's a grind. And eventually, if you have one bad game, and as we saw last year, goes down to literally the last possible game in a Game 7 for a World Series to crown a champion. And so many close calls. The World Baseball Classic is the opposite of that. We have an opportunity here to create a lot of moments, and all these matchups are going to be Game 7 with a single elimination. And when we watch this final day of pool play unfolding, the story of the tournament became less about the teams that are advancing and more about, for me, I mean, maybe it's a bias here, about how close the U.S. came to putting itself in a really extremely uncomfortable situation. Luckily for them, the media cycle moves pretty fast, and this will be a discussion point for sure. Mark DeRosa on MLB Network, he's made a lot of goodwill with the media accommodations he made in his media training. But this stuff that we saw for Team USA, their path through Pool B, this will be discussed for a long period of time. And a lot of people were talking about how could you take it seriously if he's critical of any managerial decision throughout the season, if he put the Team USA in the situation that they're in. And again, I mean, we should lead with that conversation. And I think a lot of that continues to kind of poke its head here. And the U.S., as I mentioned in the intro, sidestep that issue. But as we watch the game against Italy progress, we came on here live after to discuss all the fallout of it. It became increasingly apparent that the U.S. might not have fully understood its position in the Pool B standings. And I mentioned Mark DeRosa. Several players appeared to operate under the assumption that the Americans had effectively secured their advancement from their earlier victories in the pool. In reality, as we saw, that assumption is not entirely correct because we discussed it, the tie-breaking system based on runs allowed divided by defensive outs recorded. The U.S. at that point had not technically clinched the spot in the knockout stage, so they needed help here after losing to Italy. And so depending on the outcome of the final pool game between Italy and Mexico that we saw tonight that we'll recap, there were still scenarios in which the U.S. could have been eliminated from the tournament, and likely scenarios. It wasn't like it was this outlandish thing that had to happen. So as we saw the implications of the standings becoming clearer, I think a lot of the reporting, and I mentioned the news cycle moves very fast. John Boy posted a great reaction video explaining, I mean, really the realization that spread through the U.S. dugout during the later innings of the Italy game, players who had initially been seated began moving toward the top step of the dugout. You think of the lineup decisions, and if you start putting that together with Paul Goldschmidt playing and not having Mason Miller come out, you could see maybe there was a realization during the game and the mood noticeably shifted. And that's still unacceptable, even if you realize in real time, better late than never. But I think there's a lot to be said about the Americans recognizing that their tournament was not as secure as they had believed. And I mean, again, I want to make it clear, they sidestep that. The narrative isn't the same, but this is still a discussion point, especially in a situation where you had to be able to understand for a team with championship expectations from the top. And you have to be able to manage the simplest things like that. And it became very deeply uncomfortable for the conversation, and credit to Mark DeRosa. He owned that. A lot of MLB Network was scrubbing that clip from his appearance on the show, and he owned it. I mean, because the worst case scenario could have been the U.S. been eliminated, not simply because of the loss to Italy, but because of the mathematical structure of the tiebreaker system. And that's their own fault for not understanding it. They need to treat the Italy game as if it was a must win. They just didn't do it. So luckily for them, this final game of Pool B eliminated that possibility. Italy made this a decisive win over Mexico and the standings and ensured that the U.S. would advance to the quarterfinal as the second place team in the group. But again, this was something that was unacceptable and became a talking point outside. And people were using the description point of being embarrassing. And you can't really disagree with that. You can't. But for the U.S. watching what they were able to do, as we sit here, we've discussed the fallout of pretty much all the games here. Devin and I came on here after the Brazil game. I discussed the Great Britain game, even though we didn't do a live reaction. And of course, came on here right after the Mexico game. I think for the lineup, I mean, we watched them produce offense in bursts. This is a team that played with a lot of confidence through the first portion of the group stage. And they look very much like the team that could make a deep run in the knockout rounds. But I have to reiterate the fact that I keep on repeating is that they're letting opportunities slip up. They have to capitalize at runners in scoring position, especially as these games get tighter, the competition gets stiffer. These are 7 of the other teams are the best teams of this tournament. You're not going to have any layups in this, and you can't let any mistakes, and especially the mental errors we saw against Italy last night. We watched the U.S. scoring 35 total runs, allowing 17, finishing with a 3-1 record, advancing to the quarterfinal round, as I mentioned, as the second place group. Looking at Aaron Judge, central figure of this lineup, he had 4 hits and 16 at bats, hitting 2 home runs and driving in 5 runs. Of course, he struck out, and everyone's talking about that piece, but a 429 on base. His ability to reach base and provide power in the order is pretty much an anchor for them. But again, Pete Crow Armstrong, we have to talk about him. I understand a losing effort. He went 3 for 10, hit those 2 home runs, driving in 5 runs, also producing a 417 on base. And PCA is going to be a big piece to watch in these upcoming elimination games. But taken together, you talk about the depth of this team. This is a team that should go out there with the expectation to win, run the table, do what they do, and try their hand at taking home this championship. But let's talk about the turning point in Pool B coming tonight. One of the reasons we're on here discussing it, I think a big piece of this was Italy had to do their job, and Italy has impressed. There's been a lot of what we've been seeing with Italy making statements over time. They faced Mexico in the final game at Daikin Park in Houston, and this game was never really in question. Italy defeated Mexico, as I mentioned, 9-1. They finished the group stage with a perfect 4-0 record. Mexico falls to 2-2, which eliminated them from the tournament. And the final standings of the Pool B were Italy 4-0, as I mentioned. U.S. is 3-1, Mexico 2-2. Great Britain got 1 win and finished 1-3, and Brazil never got a win. So we watched Italy advancing as the Pool B champion. The U.S. moved on as the runner-up. And we didn't have to see the complicated tiebreak formula being applied here. That was a good thing. We didn't have to worry about that. But there was a scenario, and a lot of them were out there, that Mexico and Italy could have been the teams that advanced, and U.S. was on the outside looking in, and would have been a whole different conversation if Vinnie Pasquantino didn't have his historic performance. And he is the defining moment of this game. First baseman, Vinnie Pasquantino, they call him the Don, the captain of Team Italy, Vincenzo. It was the first ever 3 home run game in the history of the WBC. So kudos to him. And what made this performance even more unusual was the context entering the game. Through the first 3 games of the tournament, he's been reaching base, but he had not recorded a hit. So that changed dramatically. He was the central point of this game. In the second inning, he went on to hit a solo home run off Javier Assad, giving Italy a 1-0 lead. In the 6th, he did it again. And in the 8th, he hit his 3rd home run in the game. And for Vinnie Pasquantino, I was talking to some friends about this after the fact. Does this raise the stock of Vinnie for fantasy baseball? I'm curious how a lot of these drafts that you're having in your home leagues or competitive leagues are happening after the WBC. Injury does affect stock value, of course, but for some of these players that are playing well, they're in the frontal lobe of your brain about maybe it raises the stock of this guy as a fantasy contributor. He looks locked in right now. As I mentioned, this is a game that you have to put a lot of love on. He's playing motivated. He's playing meaningful baseball, whereas some of the counterparts in Major League Baseball playing spring training, there are meaningful at-bats that you're going to be having, but it's not comparable to the urgency we're seeing from these games, especially as we ramp up some of the single elimination pressure. And his final line here, I mentioned the 3 home runs. He had the 4 walks. And then again, after the game, I wanted to pull the clip on here, but I'll let you guys find it on YouTube. He summed up the moment. It was a great post game, and Italy's been a great story. We've been mentioning all the celebrations across the WBC, and one of the big thing was Team Italy with the espresso. Francisco Cervelli out there, and the quote from Vinnie Pasquantino. They should put this on a t-shirt right now, or give him an espresso sponsorship. He said, quote, "I'm caffeinated. I'm beamed up right now." So Vinnie Pasquantino is quite the character. And Team Italy, how do you not root for this? Of course, partial to Team United States and watching the star power and wanting them to walk away champions of the WBC, Team Italy has quickly become the sentimental favorite for what they're able to do as an underdog. And looking at how the rest of this game kind of built out, we mentioned the 3 home runs for probably being the most visible part of the victory, but their offensive production extended throughout the lineup. In the 4th inning, Jon Berti hit a home run to extend Italy's lead to 2-0. And Italy, as I mentioned before, this result was never in doubt. Created some separation, situational hitting, aggressive base running. You have to like what you see from Team Italy. And there's a shot that they can go out there and run the table. Is it likely? There's some stiff competition in this tournament. We'll preview the next couple games here. But Italy has surprised us every step of the way. They have yet to lose. They're sitting here 4-0, as we mentioned. And we watch them doing all the right things. They're hitting for power, but they're also, as I mentioned, aggressive on the base paths. We watched Dante Nori executing a bunt that allowed Jack Caglione to score. We had Jakob Marsee delivering a 2-run single, pushing the lead to 5-0. And Italy eventually finished with 9 runs. And for them, Mexico managed to score only once during the 7th inning. And again, this game was never in doubt. And a big reason of that is the guy taking the bump. It was Aaron Nola. And he played a very critical role in this outcome. And when Devin and I were previewing some of the fantasy sleepers and conversations about who we're betting on and who we're not, Aaron Nola is a guy that what could have went wrong pretty much went wrong last year for Aaron Nola as a pitcher with the Phillies. And this is a guy who's looking to bounce back. And what a moment here for him, delivering 5 innings, allowing 4 hits and 1 walk, striking out 5 batters. And we saw Mexico having their shot here. Again, the line looks like Aaron Nola was in control the whole night. But we watch a lot of the defense behind Nola pretty much stifle out any momentum that could have sparked any flame for them. And the defense definitely picked Nola up in some moments, so the line looked great. We watched in the 3rd inning, Sam Antonacci doubled off Joey Ortiz, and in the 5th inning, JJ Durazio threw out Nick Gonzalez, attempting a steal of second base. And really, those plays prevented Mexico from building any sustained rallies, and that's what you want. And Aaron Nola was good enough in this day. As I mentioned before, he's a guy, especially if they only walked one guy, that has been an issue for him walking. So for the Philly fan out there, you have to be happy what you saw from Aaron Nola tonight in a game that meant a lot for Italy here. And as we look at sort of the quarterfinals as they're emerging here, you can't help but think about just some of the other guys in this tournament. I know we're spending a lot of time talking about post-game of really the United States and what they've been able to do. But for the offensive leaders across the tournament, there's been a lot of great spots here for some of these players, electric moments. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the highlights from the DR, led by Fernando Tatis Jr., 6 hits and 13 at-bats, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs. The whole team is a vibe. And the atmosphere, any game they play, their fans are traveling internationally to be there and be a part of what feels like a World Cup atmosphere. Of course, Shohei Ohtani in Japan, 5 hits and 9 at-bats, 2 home runs, a 692 on base. His OPS is 2.025. Again, Shohei Ohtani doing Shohei Ohtani things. What else is new? We mentioned Dante Nori being a part of this Italy offense that has been doing a lot of great things. He has 6 hits and 12 at-bats, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, a 500 batting average. And also on Venezuela's side of thing, Luis Arraez, 7 hits and 14 at-bats, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, a 500 batting average himself in a short sample size, and a 1.743 OPS. So looking at Luis Arraez, another guy looking that was maybe an undesirable. He was a guy that no one was really looking at to contribute big this year, but Luis Arraez getting a shot in the WBC to showcase himself in a big way. So looking at some of these players that are contributing, and there's some other guys out here as well that we're looking at as players that can be guys that can build the momentum into the Major League Baseball season. And we'll see if Luis Arraez can do just that for the San Francisco Giants and doing what he does over there. We know that he has a couple batting titles. I know people don't like the fact that he's a light hitting infielder, but for the most part, if he can build some momentum, only 28 years old, maybe he can carry that into the season and continue some of the strength here. But some brand names here, offensive leaders across the tournament, and looking at some of the stats. Shout out to Baseball Savant, putting a lot of the advanced stats of the WBC up there. That's been fun to watch, and looking at some of those things about these games meaning something. And, you know, I want to reiterate the atmosphere piece, because the atmosphere has been just electric, and the distinctness between Houston, Miami, San Juan, and Tokyo, that's been well said. But really, what I'm most excited for is not only just this, really the pivotal matchups with Game 7 atmosphere. It's going to be what these fans are going to bring to the table when it's all on the line. And baseball tends to breed moments like this over time, where you just have this electricity that can't be quantified in any other sports, because there's no clock here. Of course, there is a lot of the breathing of the game, try to do pace of play, but ultimately the moments will come down to every pitch, biting on every moment. And there's international fans of all these countries that are living and dying with every single pitch, and it just means more. So as we get prepared for the quarterfinal matchups in Houston, as we mentioned, pool play is completed. We're getting a little bit of a reprieve right now, just tonight, and it's right off to the races once again. The first 2 quarterfinal matchups are going to be taking place really tomorrow. First game played tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Team USA is going to be facing Team Canada. Canada, of course, if we didn't really talk about them a lot, but they advanced by winning Pool A with a 3-1 record, clinching first place after defeating Cuba 7-2. And Canada and Puerto Rico, they finished with identical records, but the tiebreaker came into play here, and they held the head-to-head tiebreaker, so they wound up winning Pool A. And another historical note for Canada, this is the first time that they've advanced beyond the first round of the WBC. So cool to see for them. This is a big piece, and I believe this is also the first time Cuba has not advanced past this spot. So switching spots here, but also it speaks to Canada's growth as an international program with baseball, and parallel that with the success of the Toronto Blue Jays last year. Canadian baseball is doing a really good thing right now. So we do know the winner of the U.S. and Canada will advance to the semifinals and face the winner of the DR and South Korea, as you guys can see on the screen here. And setting the stage for that, it's going to be absolutely electric. And we don't have the probable pitchers yet, but we do know for the Canadian team that they've been quietly having a really good tournament. And as I mentioned before, if you're watching all the WBC, you are aware of the things they are doing, and they're going out there and certainly having some stroke offensively. They've been pitching pretty well, and watching what Team Canada has done, especially that game against Cuba. I know all eyes here in the United States were on what was happening with Italy and Mexico, but for the Canadian team, they're going out there and really just playing sound baseball, and they look very impressive throughout all of that. I mean, they finished no better than 9th in each of the 5 prior tournaments that they've been involved in, and they've already won more games this year, which is 3, than they won in any other classic. So for them, I mentioned, the offense piece, but there's also a lot to like about the defensive side of things. And, I think watching how they're able to just put games out of reach and not let teams get back into it. And we watched Canada's bullpen, which might be something to watch tomorrow night against the U.S. They did just enough to hold the lead, wiggling out of 2 key jams in the 6th. Adam Macko struck out Cappy to leave the bases loaded. In the 7th, we have James Paxton, old friend James Paxton. He's retired from the MLB. He came in. He fanned Yohan Moncada, who came in to the plate as a potential tying run in a 3-run game. And you look at a lot of the stuff, Big Maple coming out here, household name at one point, maybe played for your favorite team out there. And we had a lot of conversation. One of the quotes post-game from Canada's manager, he said, quote, he wanted to come out of retirement, get off the couch and come and throw for Team Canada because he's never done that before. He's experienced league championships and played at the highest level in Major League Baseball, but he never represented the country. I think that was the biggest thing for him. So now they're doing something they have never done before, and we'll see if they can get past the U.S. But the stage is set for another game with must win, and almost feels like Canada is playing with house money while the U.S. still has all the pressure to right the wrongs of what we mentioned before. It could have been a catastrophic embarrassment with the Mark DeRosa situation and the team going out celebrating, thinking that they were already clinched to get to the next spot. And the second quarterfinal in Houston will take place on Saturday, March 14th at 3 p.m. at Daikin Park. In that game, Italy's going to face Puerto Rico, which advanced to the knockout stage after finishing 3-1 in Pool A. So, listen, we spent a lot of time talking about Italy, but this is a milestone for this international program. There's no doubt about it. They have now advanced beyond pool play 3 times in the history of WBC, but they've never won a quarterfinal game. So this matchup is an opportunity for the Italian national team to reach the semifinals for the first time ever, something they're trying to do. The vibes couldn't be higher. And I wouldn't say similar to what we're saying with Team Canada, that there's less pressure. But for Team Italy, they're probably looking in the mirror and saying, why not us? But if you look at the matchup historically, Puerto Rico has had the edge when these teams have met in this tournament. And Puerto Rico defeated Italy 4-3 during the 2013 World Baseball Classic in Miami, a tight second-round game in which Puerto Rico rallied late to secure the victory. They go on to meet again in 2017 when Puerto Rico defeated Italy 9-3 during first-round play in Mexico. And again, you can throw those things out. There's a lot of years in between all these. We mentioned 2013, we mentioned 2017. It's 9 years ago. So this is we're sitting here with a whole different perspective on these two squads, where they've come, the growth of both programs. But at the same time, you have to consider that there is some history between these two programs. We do know the winner of the Italy-Puerto Rico quarterfinal will advance to the semifinal round and face the winner of Japan versus Venezuela, with that game taking place in the final stage of the tournament in Miami. So we'll see if we have Japan-Venezuela, the winner of that. And Italy has a really funny chance to do something fun here if they want to continue to run the table. Maybe they upset the world and get back to they have a tough path, because if they're going to do this, they have to either beat, obviously they have to beat Puerto Rico to get past them in the quarterfinal. And then if they have to beat either Japan or Venezuela. I think most people were predicting Japan beats Venezuela, but never say never. If this pool has taught us anything, as I said in the intro, is that this does not abide by any structural rules. It feels like some chaos is waiting to happen with a March Madness type of vibe. But one important structural detail about this tournament is that once the quarterfinal matchups are determined, the tournament follows a fixed bracket format. I know a lot of people were asking, is this going to be reseeding teams after each round? So no. In other words, the path of this championship is really predetermined once the quarterfinals begin. So this is going to be set in stone. The matchups are the matchups. So as I mentioned, the winner of US and Canada will advance to the semifinal round, and they're going to take on the winner of the DR versus South Korea. And we also mentioned Italy, Puerto Rico face the winner of Japan versus Venezuela. So that's not going to change. Let's just say one of these lower seeds winds up winning. It's still not going to change. As I mentioned, we know the situation in Houston quarterfinals, but all semifinal games will be played at Lone Depot Park in Miami. And that's also going to be the final stage of the tournament. As we mentioned before, the atmosphere in Miami is going to be electric. They've already been electric. They've been involved in the pool play. So I'm sure you guys have seen the highlights of all the fans flocking to the stadium. And if you're a Marlins fan, or just like if you're the Marlins front office, watching how electric that ballpark has been in this week for the WBC, how do you not want that for the Marlins and bring winning baseball over there? But I digress. That's a whole other conversation. The semifinal round is going to be taking place 3 days from now, 4 days from now as well, March 15th, March 16th. And as we mentioned all the way, the final game, championship game, March 17th in Miami. So as we're recording now, it is midnight on the 12th, and it is absolutely waiting for us 5 days from now. So the quarterfinals about to begin taking hold. And as we're sitting here as baseball fans, I think everyone understands exactly what the path to the title looks like. And let's be honest, how narrow it is for some of these teams. And the margin for error is something, and I know that sounds cliche, is so razor thin. And the mistakes are going to be maximized in games like this. And we can see how quickly it falls in the other direction. Every one of these teams out here has a chance to do something very special. And watching what we're able to see here, Japan coming here as the favorite, they're trying to defend their title. This is something that they've prided themselves on. When we had Jim Allen on our show, he was discussing just in general how important this is to just the country and what we've been able to see for baseball in Japan. It's a party and it goes by very fast, but there's a point of pride internationally for everybody. And it feels like that's contagious here in the US. I've been mentioning a lot of the local media, WFAN here in New York, and listening to the radio callers coming in and just having the very much egocentric view of a fan of just your Major League Baseball team. Of course, Met fans always reference the Edwin Diaz situation, and Kyle Teal yesterday got hurt. So I'm sure a lot of fans of the Chicago White Sox are not happy to see him get hurt. But at the same time, this is how baseball grows. This is how the next sequential step to making baseball on the same level playing field of the footballs and soccers of the world, really, because this is how the game grows. And you can see how electric this is by creating this international World Cup style. And it's grown so much, and it really hasn't been that long of a time. We mentioned the World Cup and what FIFA's done since the 50s, essentially. And we've only had this for 20 years. So if you continue to build on this, imagine where we'll be another 30, 40, 50 years from now. It's exciting to think about. And it honestly is breeding new baseball fans. And that also breeds new talented players that will eventually play for your favorite team. Because typically, and it's not always the case, baseball fans want to play baseball, and those talented players, and we watch them from all different walks of life, all these different countries that are here, and even the countries that have been eliminated. A lot of talented players. Maybe they're not going to make it to the major leagues, but some of these guys are getting some shine here. And this is not just a showcase exhibition for Major League Baseball. It's really just honing the next generation of future stars in all of baseball, whether it be the MPB or the KBO or also Major League Baseball. A lot of great stuff here. And I honestly, as we sit and really look back at this first week of the World Baseball Classic, and it moves so fast. And again, I mentioned before, this helps is like a time machine to get to opening day. And it really bridges the gap because this is usually the time where spring training is exhausting and there's not much watchability outside of just wanting to follow some storylines and making sure your favorite players don't get hurt. Things like this are fun. And, you know, March obviously known for March Madness with college basketball and just the madness that is aptly named after it, the chaos that ensues with the inevitable upsets that happen. That feels like we're approaching something like this here. And a team like Italy can move through pool play undefeated, finishing 4-0. And I think they're one of the more compelling stories of this entire event and really this month of sports. How are you not captivated by what's going on here? And a lot of the conversation in my specific fantasy baseball chat is just seeing the growth of WBC, whether you're on the train somewhere, you're in the grocery store or whoever, and you're watching a lot of fans of baseball wearing the gear, whether it be a shirt or a sweatshirt or a hat or a jersey of these teams and of their favorite players. That's a good thing. When people are discussing baseball and they're passionate about the games and having conversations with people about what's happening on the field, whether it be internationally or stateside here where your local MLB teams, that's a good thing. And for Team USA, like they enter the tournament as the favorites, and there is a certain heavy lies the crown pressure with that. And they're one of the deepest rosters we've ever seen fielded. And there's a dream team nature to this. Devin and I were mentioning the school bull and Skeens thing and all the storylines that went into this. I think there's a lot to really both sides of the coin for different stories, and they're both compelling for different reasons. And everyone loves an underdog story. Everyone would love to see really just compelling TV going forward. But the contrast for me is part of what makes the WBC unique, because you have programs that are just formidable favorites like to Japan. But imagine what it would be like if Japan winds up being upset in this first round here. And we watched them, you know, it wasn't like they slugged everyone to death. They had a close game at Australia and easily could have been lost, but it wasn't. And Australia, clearly not a team that advanced. They wound up getting eliminated, but it shows that there's some flaws in the armor of Japan when it matters. And as someone going to dethrone Samurai Japan, it feels like the championship does go through them. And I think this format has shown at the very least that the level of uncertainty, it doesn't exist in longer postseason series, and it's unique. And I think that's what makes it captivating to a lot of baseball fans, because it doesn't exist on any other stage. At the highest level of baseball, it's hard to see these players play in a format like this that's so quick moving and so concise, and to create the urgency in every step of the way to essentially guarantee Game 7 formats going forward to crown a champion. And to know sitting here 5 days from now, we will know who won this championship is a lot of fun. And I think once this tournament moves into the knockout stage, as I mentioned before, the margin for error effectively disappears. And that was the undoing of the U.S. last night. And we mentioned just their inability to hit with runners in scoring position when it mattered. They eventually scored those runs, and that played a huge difference where they still lost the game and they put themselves in a position to be eliminated. But the fact that they came back and maybe realized last second to pull themselves out of the fire and score in 6 runs, that was the difference maker. Because if they didn't score and they went quietly into the night and lost 8-0, or maybe the game got out of control, they would not be sitting here getting ready for the next game against Canada. And that's a fact. So I know people are not a fan of tiebreakers like that, but that essentially saved the US's ass. So with the quarterfinal round beginning, I'm going to see if we're going to be hopping on here post episodes, and maybe I'll hop on here after. I know Devin and I are thinking about hopping on and doing the Central Division preview. So maybe after the Canadian matchup, I'll hop on here and discuss that. If you got, and I do appreciate the feedback. There's been some great feedback on audio and video of these shows. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, for baseball, for a sport that is built for the long haul, the race, it's cool to see it in sprint format. And we know that one swing of the bat, maybe one pitching decision, one defensive play, it's ultimately going to determine which teams continue their pursuit towards this World Baseball Classic Championship. And one of these teams will meet their untimely end. And the fact that it actually means something, that it hurts that your team potentially could lose, and watching these teams celebrate and potentially sit with their heads hung in despair, that shows the level of importance that this tournament has been able to create. So I, for one, I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those things where you don't know how you're going to feel until you're watching it. And as diehard baseball fans, we're sitting here and we're very much enjoying just meaningful baseball, where typically in the month of March, you're not getting meaningful baseball, even when opening day comes. The urgency, of course, you want your team to win every game, but there's not the pressure when you know it's one of 162, I should say, as compared to this, where it's win or go home. And there's a love affair that's developing with fans and their international teams. And I'm curious if that exists for the US, because there's a superstar nature that maybe you're rooting for certain players that are, the Roman Anthony's of the world if you're a Red Sox fan, Bobby Witt if you're a Royals fan. I wonder if there's the same attachment that US baseball fans have towards this team, and maybe it determines on how this all ends, or we're watching teams that are just galvanized by the fan bases that are coming to watch them play. The Venezuelan fans, the DR fans, the Puerto Rico fans. There's a genuine excitement and a genuine nature of just loving what they're seeing and enjoying this game of baseball. But it's curious if that's going to carry the same weight. How will these scenes in Houston continue to be? And eventually Miami, what will that look like in these games that eventually, because we haven't seen Japan here stateside. They've been playing their games in Tokyo. They're coming over here and they're doing their things over here. What will the traveling crowd look like for them? Will they have home field advantage in any way? Will there be a large contingent of Japanese fans coming out to celebrate with them? Will it even matter? Are they too unstoppable of a Death Star that they're going to just mow everybody down? And I think that's the fun possibilities that exist here for the World Baseball Classic. I'm, again, looking forward to it. That's why I've been hopping on here and discussing it, because I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk about it, because by the time we hop on again, this has been moving so fast. And to sit here and wait for a reaction and have a discussion about it, I want it to be really memorialized in a conversation here and give my immediate knee-jerk, very impulsive reaction to what we just watched. Again, Italy, they're sitting here on the back of Captain Vinnie Pasquantino. 3 home runs tonight. Italy's doing their thing. The Don, Vincenzo Pasquantino, doing his thing. So I'm looking forward to it. We'll keep you guys updated on all things WBC, college baseball, Major League Baseball, of course, fantasy baseball. Head over to the Fantasy Pros and check out, Devin and I are updating our rankings. Of course, the injury to Hunter Green affected some of the pitching rankings, so go and check that out before your drafts. Use Fantasy Pros for sure for your mock drafts, and then eventually for your home drafts and your competitive league drafts. They are a great resource. Devin and I are not the only experts there. There's many other talented experts in there doing their thing. And and I think as we get ready for our drafts, Devin and I have our For the Fame fantasy baseball draft in 10 days. So really excited about that to get our home. You guys probably see it behind me. I have the draft board ready to go. We do a live in-person draft with everybody gathering together. But that's around the corner. Baseball's right here. There's warmer weather here in the Northeast. And all you can say is give a nice thank you to the WBC for keeping us warm during this time and getting us ready for competitive baseball. We'll see if the U.S. can do it. We'll continue to watch everything that continues to go down. If we're looking at both sides of things, again, check out U.S. Canada tomorrow night. It's going to be a great time watching what happens over there. Stay tuned to the probable pitchers. We don't have those updated as we're speaking today, but there is a lot to be said about the meaning of this game. And you don't get too many second chances to pull it from the fire. And that's what we're seeing, what we're getting from Team USA. They could have been down and out, and maybe they're taking it a little bit more seriously now. So Mark DeRosa, he's probably going to be answering that question for a long time, and it might become a footnote if they're able to be crowned, and it might be a nice little line that he brings out of being able to overcome adversity. We know how quickly the narrative can change, but winning is the biggest deodorant of it all. So again, we'll be back soon. As I mentioned, we're probably recording our division previews for Central tomorrow. Stay tuned to the feed. We have a lot of episodes dropping. If you guys appreciate what we're doing over here, give us a follow on @TablesettersPod on IG and on X. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube @Tablesetters Baseball. And also leave a 5-star review. That means a lot for us. I know we're trending in the top U.S. baseball podcast right now, and that means a lot in top 250. And we're going to continue to give you guys content all throughout the offseason. So stay tuned to the rest of the WBC. Stay tuned to the feed for other episodes we'll be dropping, and we'll talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.